In this video, we will show you how to replace your rear axle bearing on this Ford F-150. This will be located behind your rear wheel. Let's get into it. Let's prepare to remove our driver's side rear wheel. To do this, safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. If you have a center cover, go ahead and remove that. I'm using a small pry bar for this. I'm just finding the slot in the center cover. We'll pry this out in place. Once you have that removed, it exposes our 6 21mm lug nuts. Let's remove all of these and the wheel. With the wheel out of the way, we have a clear view of our rear brakes. Let's go ahead and start removing our caliper from the area. To start removing the caliper, I'm going to use a pry bar directly inside of this port. We're attempting to make a little bit of space in here so we can move the caliper around. After pushing back that caliper piston far enough, we can continue on to our two 10mm headed mounting bolts along the back side. Let's get this next one. Now we're going to roll the caliper out of place. We're going to start along the top and pull it down and away. A quick inspection of the braking material as we continue on. Once you have the caliper removed, you can inspect those brake pads. On this application, these pads and rotors should be replaced. I'm going to set this aside for now. Let's get this rotor off of here. Thorough inspection of that, we'll set it aside. With the brake rotor out of the way, have a look along the backside of your axle hub. This is where we can see our axle seal, and inside the tube is where the bearing's going to be located. Now in the center of the rear differential, this is where the gear housing is. We're going to remove the differential cover. Before doing so, you just want to make sure you scrape along the sides, confirming that there's no debris that could potentially fall inside. We can just use a flat scraper for this. Now after cleaning everything, the next thing we'll do is put a collection receptacle underneath the rear differential pan area. We're not removing the pan yet. Let's move along the forward driver's side of the differential so we can remove our fill plug first. We're using a 3/8 drive ratchet for this. Fluid may come out of this differential port. A thorough inspection of that fill plug confirming it is still reusable. Go ahead and clean it up and set it aside. Now we can start removing our differential pan. To remove the differential cover, you're going to find that you have several 13mm headed mounting bolts making their way all the way around. I'm going to start by removing the first mounting bolt. A quick inspection, start that one in just a couple threads. After that, we'll continue all the way around. Keep in mind there will be fluid inside of this area. It's common to have identification tags on your differential cover mounting hardware. Make sure you reinstall them. It really doesn't matter where you put them as long as they're still attached to the vehicle when you're done. Now that we have all the hardware out of there, an exception of the one bolt that's only started in a couple threads, we can start separating this. Try to get this in between here. It's going to drain out all the fluid. Let's get this out of here. Now, of course, you are going to want to thoroughly clean and inspect the differential cover, especially along the areas that's supposed to have the seal and the mounting bolts. Once you give it a quick inspection, confirming it's still reusable, set it aside. After dealing with that cover, we're going to pay attention to the differential housing itself. Obviously, we want to make sure that we remove any of the pre-existing gasket from this area. For that, you can use a scraper if necessary. Obviously, we want to protect this area before we scrape anything off into it. Okay. So now at this point, I have this entire casing scraped down. I have a smooth surface here. I've also cleaned my differential cover. This is in great condition. Let's continue on inside this area. Now in this area, we're looking for this mounting bolt right here. You'd be using a 3/8 to remove the mounting bolt. This bolt actually goes all the way through this area and it holds a metal pin in place. I'm going to turn this. You need to have the vehicle in neutral to be able to turn this. Now that bolt is holding this in place, preventing it from falling out. We need to be able to remove this. So I'm going to keep spinning this. We want to be able to gain access to that mounting bolt and allow this to make its way down. I've got a 3/8 wrench. You can use a 3/8 socket too. See if we can get that to break free. There it is. An important note, you want to make sure nothing falls out of the differential as you continue on. So now this is starting to slide. I'm going to hold my finger over this so it does not fall out of place. Let's remove that mounting bolt. A thorough inspection. If it looks like it's rotted in any way, obviously that would be an issue and you'd want to replace this. Go ahead and clean that up, give it a close inspection, set it aside. Now we can start pulling this down and out of place. Thorough inspection of that as well. Now we're going to pay attention inside this area. We can see the very end of our axle shaft. This is the inboard side. There's actually a locking clip inside of this gear. So what we need to do is make our way to the outside of the axle hub area. We're going to force that axle inward towards the center of the differential. You're going to see the axle shaft push towards the center here, and the clip should dislodge. With that pressed in, we can see our locking clip. I'm going to use a magnet for this once I get it to break free. Sometimes these will be stuck on the axle itself. There we go. A thorough inspection of this, double checking to make sure it doesn't look like it's worn or weak in any way. This looks really good. We'll set it aside. Now we're back out along the outer portion of the axle. We'll take hold of the hub area and start carefully pulling this away. We're removing the axle. This is exposing our axle seal. Once you have the axle out, we need to inspect down along this area. This is where the seal would be and the bearing. You want to go ahead and give it a quick cleaning and double check to make sure there is not any grooves or damage. If you can feel anything with your fingernail, that's going to need to be taken care of. This feels really good. We can go ahead and set this aside. Now we can remove the axle seal from our differential tube. To do this, you can use a seal removal tool or a basic pry bar. As far as the pry bar is concerned, I'm going to come in all the way behind my seal, up against this area. Being extremely careful not to cause any damage to my differential tube, let's gently pry. Okay, it's starting to separate here. There it is, friend. The next thing I'll do is take a clean rag. I'm going to carefully put it inside this bearing area, protecting it from anything to fall inside. Now what we need to do is clean up the differential tube. Just try to get all along the outer edge here. Now I'm just going to use a flat blade razor and we'll clean up the rest of this. A quick wipe and a thorough inspection. Now we can start removing our axle bearing. For this, we're going to have a slide hammer with a specialty adapter. The adapter we want needs to be able to fit inside of the differential tube directly up against the bearing housing. Just bring this inside the bearing. I'm going to make sure that I have that up against just the bearing housing. And now we're going to use this washer and press it up against the bearings themselves. It's important to use a type of adapter that has that washer. So when you're trying to use the slide hammer to remove the bearing, in case the bearings themselves come out of the housing, they don't go shooting across the room or potentially hurt you in some way. Now it's time for our slide hammer. Just going to go ahead and screw this into my adapter. Now, once you have the tool in place and everything's properly secured, let's continue on tapping on this. We're pulling the bearing outward. There it is, friend. Prior to installing the brand new bearing, we need to clean and inspect the differential tubing now. We'll use a clean rag, wipe out the entire internal surface here, confirming there's no damage in any areas. Now that we have that cleaned out, we can install our brand new rear wheel bearing. When installing the bearing, we're going to take this and start bringing it into the differential tube. We're using a bearing driver that fits over the entire casing of the bearing. We don't want anything that hangs off the edges though, and definitely not something that hits up against the internals of the bearing itself. Now, when I was tapping that in, you could hear an audible difference. Once you start hearing the difference in sound, typically that means that it's completely bottomed out. It needs to be. Let's just double check. It's secure. One last inspection in here and we can reinstall our seal. Now it's time to install our axle seal. As far as the axle seal is concerned, the first thing you want to do is have a look along the backside. You're going to find that you have a groove. Inside of that groove, there's also a spring. I like to add some petroleum jelly all the way around that groove, holding the spring in place while I continue on driving this in. As for the seal, we're going to start it in by hand and we'll tap it in. We want to use a seal driver tool for this. It's a flat disc. As we were tapping that in, we can hear an audible difference. That's where it bottomed out against the differential tube. We're just going to feel all the way around to double check, making sure it's properly secured in place. Now we're going to add gear lubricant to this area. We want to make sure it's going inside of the differential tube, specifically on the bearings themselves. We're using the manufacturer's specified fluid, 75-140. We'll apply some directly on those bearings. With a gloved finger, go ahead and rotate them around as necessary, working that lubricant into each and every area of the bearing itself. Now that that's well lubricated, we can continue on with our axle. As we bring the axle shaft into position, we're being extremely careful not to cause any damage to our bearing or our seal. There we are. Now we're pressing this in a little bit further than what it typically would want to be because we do have to make our way back inside that rear differential pumpkin to reinstall our locking clip. Now we have this cleaned up, let's go ahead and install it. Press it right into the groove of the axle. Press it on there as far as possible. Continuing on, we're going to push the axle back outward. You can either do that from in here or make your way back outward. Now at this point, we're going to pause on this side of the vehicle. If you intend on replacing the bearing on the opposite side, now's the time to do it. Go over to the other side of the vehicle and repeat this exact same process. After that, you're going to be back in the center of the differential. Now it's time to make our way back to the center of the differential. We're going to be installing the next two parts. Let's start with this. We want to make sure that we have our circular port facing towards where our mounting bolt port is. Start bringing this up and through. Now, if you find that you have a hard time bringing this through, you can carefully reach inside this area and you can make adjustments to these gears. You just want to be extremely careful you don't push them too far and they eventually fall out. Coming straight up and through. We're aligning our mounting bolt port. Now for this, I've already cleaned the threads and I've applied blue thread locker. You can also use green if you'd like, but never use red thread locker on this application. Start it in, snug it up. The torque for this is 22 foot-pounds, assuming you can get a torque wrench in this area. There we are. You need to confirm that this is properly torqued. If it loosens and removes for some reason, this could potentially come out, hit up against the differential cover, and cause some serious damage. We have it torqued. Let's go ahead and clean up the mounting surface here once again so we can reinstall our pan cover. Now we're going to pay attention to our differential pan cover. We've cleaned the mating surface on the pan itself and inspected it. Everything looks good. We're going to continue on with gasket maker. If you do not have a pan gasket, the important thing about gasket maker is you want to make sure that it is oil resistant. After confirming that, we're going to make a bead all the way around this differential pan, and I'm going to spread it out using a gloved finger. Gloved finger here. As we spread this out, we want to make sure we coat the entire mating surface. It only needs to be a thin layer all the way around. Let's get this on the vehicle. We'll use parts cleaner directly on a rag. Clean the entire mating surface. There can be no gear oil on the mating surface. Otherwise, your seal may not seal properly. Everything's cleaned. We have our gasket on the pan. Let's start getting this in position. We're going to start on all of our mounting bolts. If you have one of those tags, make sure you install that as well. As I mentioned, as far as the tags are concerned, they can go anywhere. I typically like to have them on the driver's side of the pan cover, so when I tighten the bolts, if it spins the tag, it does not damage it. Make sure that one's in. Once they're all started in, snug them up. The torque for these is 33 foot-pounds. Get our torque wrench. There's that tag spinning as I mentioned. Just fold that up against there. Just do a second pass confirming everything's properly secured. Perfect. If you're using Gasket Maker, you need to follow the instructions on it for the drying time. After you're sure that's complete, we'll continue on with adding the manufacturer's specified fluid. We're using 75-140. This vehicle also requires friction modifier. You'd want to add that as well. Now we can install our fill plug. I have thread sealant on my threads. Start it in, snug it up. Right there is bottomed out. Just a tiny bit further there. Go ahead and clean up any mess in this area. Now we're going to clean the hub mating surface of the axle so we can install our rotor using a wire brush. This looks pretty good. After cleaning the area, apply some copper anti-seize to the mounting surface. The next thing we have to do is pay attention to the back side of the rotor. We want to clean the mating surface and each one of our braking surfaces. Let's get this in place. Get our caliper on. Just tap it onto place. Should seat perfectly. Continue on with your mounting bolts. Let's install both of our caliper slider mounting bolts. For these, once you have them started in, snug them up and torque them to 20 foot-pounds. And double check to make sure your flex hose isn't twisted or kinked in any way. One more quick inspection in this area, we'll reinstall our wheel. Once you have your wheel in place, start on all 6 of your 21mm lug nuts and we'll bottom them out. Now with the wheel safely on the ground, let's torque each one of our 21mm lug nuts to 150 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. If you have a center cover, install that now. Now when installing the center cover, the one thing that we want to pay attention to is the slot where we had pried from. If you are looking at the wheel, you're going to find that it has a notch. That notch would be located closest to your valve stem. Let's align all 3 of these areas and we'll tap this into place.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.